Welcome to the tea table. I am so happy you've joined me today. And this is a special day, a special celebration in honor of our gracious Queen, Elizabeth II, which is this week is her birthday week. And she turned 96 years old. Incredible. And she is going to be celebrating between now, well, actually all year, for her 70th year of reign over England, the United Kingdom, Great Britain. And what a wonderful reign it has been. Really, it's been a reign of peace. She came in to be the queen right after World War II in 1952 and has faithfully given her all to her people and to the whole world, to all of us. She has been my queen since, before I was born. She's the queen we've all grown up with. She is part of us. And we say, God save the queen. And I pray God will give her many more years to serve her country, her God, her family, and all of us. She has only done good. Well, the music I'm playing today is George Friedrich Handel's famous Water Music. And it was originally composed for a British monarch, one of her ancestors, King George. And they put the instruments on a barge and went down the Thames River. And part of this music, we will come to the royal fireworks. And when we do, I'll point it out. And that was a peace treaty between France and England at that time. And that is the wedding music that I chose to walk down the aisle when I married my husband at St. Mark's Cathedral. And we had a trumpet and a pipe organ, and it is probably one of our favorite pieces of music. And you all know Handel from his composition of the great Hallelujah Chorus and the oratorio called the Messiah that is performed everywhere at Christmas. He was actually German and had come to London to try to find more opportunity to get his music out. That's always the battle. Well, if you haven't gotten your tea yet, pause and please get your tea, because this is a royal happy birthday party to Queen Elizabeth. Okay, I'm going to show you my little tea tray. I didn't know what to choose. Everything I have reflects Queen Elizabeth. But I found a little royal crown, cobalt blue, that will sit on the tray, and silver creamer and sugar, and a little crown candle, and a gold vase with a pink carnation, and my teapot. This is a very special royal teapot, and on it is one of her ancestors, King Henry VIII. And I believe it's all of his wives. And you know, Henry VIII, he gets a bad name because, he was pretty rough, but he did many great things. And as a young man, they called him King David. He could ride the horse, he could sing, he could play the lute, he wrote poetry. He was a great warrior, even though he wasn't necessarily at war, but he was extremely athletic. And he actually, it was so interesting because he actually, because of him and his problems, which is interesting in life, sometimes our problems bring good things. And we don't like to have problems, do we? No. And we like to have just a smooth road. But because he split with Rome over his remarriage, it opened the door for the Protestant Reformation. And before that time, the Protestants had been very persecuted in England. William Tyndale, who basically translated the entire Bible that we have today, known as the King James, they made a few changes, but they used his work. Well, William Tyndale, actually, his dying words, because he fled to the continent and then he was double-crossed and he was burned at the stake. Imagine, for translating the Bible. It's like supreme cancel culture, I guess, or, you know, supreme solicitation that the Bible wasn't only to be held by the church priests or highest bishops, and no scholar was allowed to translate it from Latin and Greek and Hebrew into the vernacular of the common man. Yeah, and William Tyndale's dying words when he was burned at the stake on the continent were, "Open the eyes of the King of England." And that was Henry VIII. And do you know that under his reign, freedom came for the Protestants? And they did get a Bible. And then later they got another Bible under King James in the 16s, you know. I am looking at my tray, and do you know I had 2 cups chosen for this talk, and they are not on my tea table. Well, let me show you what I did bring you. This is a Royal Sugar Bowl, cobalt blue, and it has Queen Elizabeth's initials on it. And I think it's very old. I think it was commemorating her original coronation. And I have another plate that is very special. And this is commemorating her original coronation. She was so young, she was newly married, and she had 2 children. And this happened in 1952. You can see that. This is really precious. Now, I have a few other things. This was commemorating her when she had her 25th anniversary. And that was in 1977, I believe. And my husband and I, we got married in 78, and so we were on our honeymoon in Victoria, BC. And I believe that I bought that in Victoria, BC, because they were carrying for a whole year all of her 25th anniversary. Here's another little darling dish I picked up. And this is when she's young. This is one of the older ones. And these can be used for little soap dishes or trinket dishes. And these are all special. And you know, I found these over the year, maybe at little garage sales or thrift shops, little antique shops. It's very precious, and it has the British flag on it and all of her wonderful symbolism and representing. You know, do you mind if I just run and get my cup so we can have tea together? Because I left it on the counter. I'm so sorry, but I don't want to stop the tape. Excuse me. I will be right back. Okay, thank you for being patient with me because I want to have tea with you. Now, this cup is a cup that is really old, and this is her parents when they were crowned king and queen. And you know, they didn't expect, her father didn't expect to be king. He wasn't prepared to be king because his older brother, David, was prepared to be king. But remember the story, he gave up the throne for a woman named Wallis. And she was an American, and she had been divorced. And in those days, they would not allow the King of England to marry an American. They wanted them to marry someone from the royal family or royal house of Europe. And they were very strict about that. And so he gave up his throne for the love of his woman. And so Queen Elizabeth's father, George, who really did not feel capable of being king, he was a good man. But if you saw the movie, The King's Speech, well, let's pour out and then we'll discuss. So this is my little pot, and I am going to show you this. We'll put it this way so you see them. And you know, the British are so known for their tea and their china, so this is really suiting. I imagine Queen Elizabeth has had thousands of cups of tea in her life. And have a little splash of milk, yes. And let's see. And the tea I'm drinking is from England today, yes. Oh my goodness, that is absolutely delicious. Happy birthday, Queen Elizabeth II, and God save the Queen. Well, I want to go back to the story because in the movie, The King's Speech, it was pointed out very clearly that he did not feel capable because he had a problem with a speech impediment. He would stutter, and the king has to speak publicly, and when he would get nervous. So a wonderful speech therapist worked with him, and his wife, Elizabeth, the mother of this Queen Elizabeth, beautiful lady, Elizabeth Lyon. She had been a Lyon, L-Y-O-N, from Scotland. She was so believing in her husband and supported him and gave him confidence. And he overcame this impediment and became a wonderful king and queen. Because when someone becomes the king, the wife becomes the queen. When the queen is the queen, her husband is the prince consort. Philip was the prince consort. Well, you know, Elizabeth, the mother of this queen, she was the youngest of 7 children, had grown up in a wonderful home in Scotland, and they were aristocrats. Their name was, like I said, Lyon, and she was very beloved, and they would call her the sunny girl because she always smiled. Well, then World War I came, and they had to turn their beautiful house into a hospital, which they lovingly did, and to help the soldiers. But sadly, I think 1 or 2 of her older brothers went to war and never came home. And it was devastating to her mother. And so suddenly in England after World War I, this was something that really affected the country. To this day, it was said the flower of England died in World War I. They put the leaders, the aristocrats, the lords, they were put to the front of the battle. They felt that was their duty. And if you watch the movie, Mr. Chips, that's a fabulous movie. I love it. And it is so well done, filmed in the 1930s, but it is taking place turn of the century up to World War I. And it's all about Mr. Chips, a teacher, at a boys' school, and how all these wonderful young men grow up and go to war. And so World War I had really affected her family and everyone in England. And so then when they become king and queen, World War II happens. And they have to be strong. And her mother is so strong, Queen Elizabeth's mother, they called her the Queen Mum. And she lived to be 102 and still wore little high heels. An amazing lady. But she said, I'm not leaving. Okay, this is what happened. The bombing started happening in London, okay? And they said, well, you have to leave. You have to leave. She said, if the king doesn't leave, I'm not leaving, and he's not leaving. And if I don't leave, the children aren't leaving. So they all stayed. And they were actually in Buckingham Palace when it was bombed. But they were preserved. And she walked out among the rubble and met the people. And she became beloved queen. She stuck with her people, and God got them through that horrible war. And so England, when you see the Queen always having these Veteran Day celebrations and the Memorial Day celebrations in Westminster Abbey, it's because the wars hit England so hard. And these were two wars they did not start. They were just defending freedom. The aggression came from the continent, sadly. But they prevailed, and America came in and helped them, and freedom won. And this queen knows all of that, and that's why she's so strong. She understands what life is and how precious life is. And she's a real Christian queen. You can see she goes to church. She's devout. And people say, how does she stay so strong? I believe the center of her life is trusting God. And the wonderful thing is, when England has these celebrations of coronation, royal weddings, royal funerals, sadly, or memorial events, generally they're held in Westminster Abbey. And I always say to myself, this is so incredible. The whole world is going to church because they're always Christian holy services with hymns and prayers and scriptures and a homily and a message of hope. Isn't that beautiful? I used to live in London. Well, and I lived there for a whole year. And I worked at 6 Buckingham Gate, right across from the palace. And I would come in every day to Victoria Station. And this wonderful gentleman, Mr. Mackenzie, I was so young. I was barely 21. And he was so kind. He took me under his wing. And every lunch break we had, I worked at a Christian Historical Society. And he would take me to different churches in the London area because, you know, London was originally little towns and then it became a big city. So there's a church practically on every corner. And of course the museums. He took me to the, oh my goodness, the London Gallery, Trafalgar Square. And we went to Westminster Abbey many times. And St. Paul's Cathedral actually is my favorite cathedral, sitting up on Lud Hill. Oh my goodness. And the famous painting of Jesus by Holman Hunt. And many of you know this painting. It's in many Bibles. It's Jesus knocking at the door. That hangs in St. Paul's Cathedral. And when I lived there in the 70s, I believe St. Paul's Cathedral at that time was the highest point of London. And I saw the Queen. I did. I saw her come out in her limousine, and I was just about, I don't know, 5 feet from the car. And she was beautiful. Her skin was just glowing. She had a peach hat and a peach outfit and her clear blue eyes, and so genuine, so sincere. You could feel her presence waving. And then I saw her another time, actually. Oh, this tea is fabulous. And I'll tell you where I saw her. At my alma mater, the University of Washington, where I graduated from with a history degree years ago. Well, she came in the early 80s, and they had her come to Heck Pavilion, which is the big sporting pavilion, and thousands of people were there. And I remember my son Sam, who was born in, let's see, 82, and he was about 3 years old. He remembers that. And we stood up in the balcony, and amazing, I saw her shoes, and she was wearing the exact shoes that I was wearing. A black patent pump. And it was the same design. I thought, this is special, and my name is Shoemaker. So I took it as a little blessing. But my dear friend, Dawn, I've told you about, who made dolls for years, and her friend Leanna. Well, Leanna created the most gorgeous Queen Elizabeth doll, and she won prizes for it. And Queen Elizabeth, when she came to Seattle, came on her yacht. And Leanna was allowed to go on the yacht and present the doll to the Queen. Isn't that special? Well, we all have different memories of the Queen, but do you know why she wears bright colors? It's so that when she's in a crowd, people can find her, because they come to see her, and they want to find her. And so she has these fabulous, beautiful outfits, custom made and designed for her. And she has such love and kindness. She is a merciful person. You can tell when she gives her Christmas message every year. She is always thinking of others. And if we were to follow her around, her life is service. She's called a public servant. Now, where did that concept come from, I wonder? I think I know. It came from the Bible, because Jesus said, "The greatest among you will be servant of all." And that's why in Christian countries like England and America and other Christian countries, the leaders are called ministers of state. That's where that comes from. Or public servants. It comes from the idea that leading and being in charge is a duty that is to serve others. That's where the idea of charity came from. It comes directly from the Bible. Jesus says, "Give and it shall be given unto you." That's where the concept comes that if you are blessed with financial prosperity, you want to voluntarily share with others. Not being forced to share, but give from your heart. That's where the concept of charity comes from. Where does the concept of helping others, like the Red Cross, that comes from the Bible too. The Good Samaritan, when someone falls down on the road, don't walk by them, don't ignore them, help them. Yes, help them. Do what you can. That all goes back to the Bible. And you know, anyone that is related to Great Britain can be very, very grateful and very proud that the heritage there was the British Empire. When they went around the world, they always created a school to educate, uplift, and train the next generation. They brought literacy, books, always created a church so people could worship God, and they would also create hospitals. We take this for granted, but go around the world and you'll see many countries where there is not even a hospital, or if it is, it's just a little building that is trying to copy a hospital. But the idea of a hospital actually comes from the Middle Ages. It comes from the monasteries. They were called hospiliers, and it was hostiliers, hotels and hospitals, helping people, pilgrims on the road. There were no hotels in those days. There were no hospitals. They were it. And out of that came the concept. If you go back in time, you will find your Christian roots are deep in our culture of everything good, going right back to even the Old Testament, where God, he had a people, a plan, and a purpose. It was a redeeming plan to help the whole world. He wanted to choose Israel. He chose Abraham so they could be an example to the world of a nation. And he was their king. Well, later they got a king when they wanted a king, but originally under Samuel, he was the prophet, priest, and king. And they had a representative form of government. Yes, they did. That's where it came from. Nothing comes out of a vacuum. The concept that representative and that the people could vote and the people could have a say under the law of God came right from when Moses chose out of each tribe representatives to come to the council. We are rich. We are the richest people in the world. And we have a golden book. It's called the Bible. And I encourage all of you, if you want to be strong, if you want to be good, and if you want to find your destiny, read the Bible every day, and you will find wisdom. Yes. I feel the Queen represents this, and I want to thank her for 70 years of service. And I pray we can all, in whatever capacity we have, you know, they call the organization of the royal family in the modern times, they call them the firm. But you know, I started thinking, we all have a firm. Every little family is a firm. Every little household is a firm. In the home is the first school. In the home is the first little hospital where people take care of each other. In the home is the first church where people pray together, say a blessing, read the scripture together. You know, think big. Realize what you have in your hand. Create life and beauty where you live. Don't look over the fence at the greener grass. Take your little yard. Take your little home. Take your little circle and give it your all. And the rest will be history. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I pray you have a beautiful day. And one thing I forgot, this is the Queen's cake. It's a 3-layer coconut cake. And I designate this the Queen Elizabeth Tea Talk Cake. So, have a fabulous week. And I will look forward to seeing you next time.